Universal Basic Income and the Algorithmic Age, Reclaiming Class Power in a Post-Work Economy. The emergence of artificial intelligence as a dominant force in economic, institutional, and social life signals not just a technological revolution but a profound transformation in the nature of class struggle. In a world increasingly shaped by automated systems of governance, classification, and legitimacy, traditional relationships between labor, identity, and economic security are unraveling. Within this context, universal basic income, UBI, and related forms of social safety nets are often discussed as economic tools to address technological unemployment. However, their significance extends far beyond financial redistribution. UBI must be understood as a political intervention that has the potential to reshape power relations, counter symbolic domination, and redefine the very meaning of class agency in the 21st century. Throughout the industrial era, class struggle was rooted in the relationship between labor and capital. Workers, through unions and collective action, contested exploitation by asserting their centrality in the production process. The welfare state, where it existed, was structured to support this model. Benefits such as healthcare, pensions, and unemployment insurance were tied to formal employment. This arrangement reinforced the ideological and material link between labor and deservedness. The formation of a stable middle class after World War II, particularly in the West, rested on the assumption of continuous wage labor and upward mobility through work. The political and economic leverage of the working and middle classes was secured through their participation in a labor economy defined by physical production and collective bargaining. However, the late 20th century brought fundamental disruptions to this model. Deindustrialization, the rise of the knowledge economy, and the globalization of labor markets eroded the material basis for working class power. At the same time, a new form of class hierarchy emerged, defined not by ownership alone but by symbolic capital, education, language, cultural fluency, and the ability to navigate increasingly bureaucratic and mediated institutions. This shift deepened the divide between those who held institutional legitimacy, the laminated class, and those increasingly excluded from both economic security and cultural recognition, the delaminated. Class struggle began to move from the factory floor to the realms of discourse, legitimacy, and representation. With the rise of artificial intelligence, this transformation has accelerated. AI now encodes the preferences, biases, and behavioral norms of the professional managerial class into automated systems that shape employment, speech, identity, and access. From hiring algorithms to content moderation systems, the dominant values of elite institutions are operationalized in code and enforced at scale. These systems are not neutral. They reflect and reinforce existing class divisions by privileging symbolic fluency, civility norms, and behavioral conformity. At the same time, AI is displacing not only low-wage service labor but also white-collar professional work, undermining the very strata that built and benefited from this symbolic order. As automation reduces the value of credentialed labor, the class distinction between the secure and the precarious begins to blur. Economic vulnerability is becoming increasingly widespread, shared across former boundaries of class identity. In this environment, universal basic income emerges as a strategic response not only to economic precarity, but to the reconfiguration of class power. By decoupling income from labor market participation, UBI undermines the disciplinary function of work as a condition of survival. It allows individuals to meet basic needs without subjecting themselves to algorithmic judgment, performance scripts, or the moral expectations embedded in institutionalized labor. In this sense, UBI challenges the foundations of algorithmic hegemony by reducing dependence on systems that govern access through symbolic compliance. Moreover, UBI creates space for new forms of agency and resistance. Without the constant pressure to perform worthiness through productivity or civility, individuals may have greater freedom to develop alternative ways of living, expressing dissent, and building solidarity. Those excluded from elite discourse norms are no longer penalized through deprivation. UB reclaims material autonomy as a prerequisite for political and cultural autonomy. It becomes a tool not only for redistribution but for redefinition, challenging the idea that one's social value is determined by their compatibility with dominant institutional codes. Equally important, UB invites a rethinking of value itself. By providing economic security regardless of labor contribution, it undermines the assumption that paid work is the sole measure of societal worth. This opens the door to recognizing the importance of non-market activities, caregiving, community building, cultural production, and informal economies that are often invisible in traditional metrics. It allows for the emergence of new forms of class consciousness, not centered on shared workplace identity, but on shared experiences of marginalization, autonomy, and creative possibility. However, the political potential of UB depends on how it is framed and implemented. If introduced as a technocratic solution to manage the fallout of automation, it risks becoming a pacifying mechanism, an elite concession that leaves algorithmic governance intact. If, instead, it is framed as a collective demand for autonomy and dignity in a post-work society, it can function as a platform for broader transformations. In this context, UB must be accompanied by other structural reforms, democratic control over data and air infrastructure, public investment in collective goods, and mechanisms for participatory governance. Only then can it serve as a true counterweight to the concentration of symbolic and computational power. As the age of algorithmic hegemony unfolds, the stakes of inaction grow. Without meaningful intervention, AI threatens to deepen inequalities by embedding elite values into the fabric of everyday life, enforcing conformity while eroding the economic foundation of mass participation. UB offers a means of resisting this trajectory, not only by providing material security, but by enabling the conditions for dissent, diversity, and reimagined solidarity in a society increasingly governed by code. In conclusion, universal basic income must be understood not just as an economic policy, but as a political and cultural response to the transformation of class power in the algorithmic age. It intervenes in a system where both labor and legitimacy are being reshaped by artificial intelligence, and where the very notion of value is up for negotiation. As class struggle moves from factory to discourse to interface, UB stands as a tool to reclaim autonomy, resist symbolic domination, and reconstitute social power from the ground up. The future of collective emancipation may depend not on how we work, but on how we choose to live in the presence of systems that increasingly govern what work, and worth, even mean.